Hey, what's up, everybody? It is October 17th. I always have to look down at my computer. That's if you see my eyes going down that direction, that's because I'm looking at the date. Today's October 17th, and this is Unfound Live. Hope everybody's having a great week. And I see everybody's getting in here nice and early. Kelly, Cheryl, Heather, Bobby, Jasmine, Cherie, Joyce. Everybody should know I talked to Joyce earlier today. I love it when she calls me out of nowhere. We had a great conversation. Lenola, Pamela, Angel, thanks for everybody tuning in tonight. Thank you for making time. Got a lot to talk about today. Unfortunately, we're going to start off on a very sad note, unfortunately, but I think that that's only appropriate that I talk about it first. Hello, Lenola from Dothan, Alabama. Welcome. Nicole and Deb and Janet. Hey, Janet, how are you? Good to see you tonight. Jessica, everybody, Laura, everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. Yes, we are going to start off on a sad note tonight. Some of you, I know, probably most of you, if not all of you, are in the Unfound podcast discussion group, so you maybe know where I'm going with this already. But a former guest of Unfound died a week ago today. So that would have been October 10th. And I didn't find out about it until the next evening, so over 24 hours later. The death was of Jessica Curtis, who was my guest last December 2017, when I covered the disappearance of her brother, Tyler Stice. Hello, Maureen and Ann, Lisa, Diane. I had gotten a message. Coincidentally, the person who let me know about it was a guy who had just contacted me maybe 5 days before that because he had known Tyler, had worked with Tyler, had listened to the episode, and he had emailed me on his opinions on some things. And I sent those messages to Jessica. So I met through Messenger, typing back and forth. I talked to Jessica on October 7th, and she died on October 10th. If you can still go to her Facebook page. Hello, Andrea. How are you tonight? You can still go to her Facebook page, and she took pictures from that past weekend. She was at a football game with some of her friends. And then just a few days later, on October 10th, she passed away. I do not know exactly what happened. I haven't seen an obituary anywhere. I've looked at her page. I've looked at some of her friends' pages to see if they've said anything. Nothing has really been said. And I can't help be afraid that Jessica might have taken her own life. She was 32 years old. I'm not saying the 32-year-olds, both men and women, can't have sudden, heart attack or stroke. It happens. Aneurysm, those things happen. They're fairly rare, but they happen. But being of her age, to my knowledge, she didn't have any health issues. She was out and about, everything. I can't help but think that maybe she overdosed or something like that, took her own life. But I don't know. I want you to say, for the record, I don't know. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that it was some sudden illness or like a heart attack or something that did that. But hello, Angela, Holly. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And Marky. But I can tell you when I found out about that on Thursday night, I was over in Orlando. Last week I did the program from the live show from over there where my two little nephews, were on the program with me. That I found out when we were headed to go play miniature golf. And I let my sister know when we got there, what I found out. And so we played miniature golf. We came back to the condo where we were staying in Orlando. And I'm man enough to tell you this. And and I'm not saying this, for any other reason than to show you maybe how these cases affect me. When we got back, I had to take a long walk, and some tears were shed. I won't be evasive about that. I had to take a very long walk in the dark over in Orlando on the property of where we were all staying. And if some of you are friends with me on Facebook, I put up the post about how sometimes there just aren't enough rocks, and that's a line that comes from the movie Forrest Gump. And, what it essentially means is, sometimes there's, nothing on this earth that can make certain pain go away. And, that's typified in the movie where Jenny is throwing all those rocks at the house that she grew up in. And, that line came to me as I was thinking about Jessica and her not being with us anymore. She had been through a lot in her life. Besides, even well before her brother disappeared from Kingman, Arizona. She had been abused by her stepfather. And then, I'm a little unclear. I know that she lost at least one son, or maybe, at least she lost at least one son, maybe twin sons. But she lost a son, a very young son, to a drowning. And that's how she ended up getting involved. If you go to her page, you'll find out that she was very involved in teaching kids to swim and letting parents know about the dangers of young, kids and babies being around water. She threw herself into that. And as Andrea's saying, and Andrea, who is watching right now, and I know Andrea, she lost one son from SIDS, and then she lost another one from a drowning. Thank you, Andrea, for adding that. I wasn't clear on that. And then, of course, in 2016, she loses her brother to a disappearance. A disappearance that personally, I'll just come right out and say this on this program. I believe her stepfather, also Tyler's stepfather, was responsible for Tyler's disappearance. And that is something that Jessica thought as well. She and I continued to talk after, and as I told you, as late as October 7th, she and I, had a conversation, although it might not have been about particularly that. But she's not with us anymore. And, I know eventually, and the other thing is that, we just passed 100 missing persons cases on Unfound. We're well over 100 in full episodes, but as far as cases go, we just passed 100. Alyssa Turney was case number 100. And so when you get up to that number, that, eventually somebody that you've gotten to know very well, as well as you can get to know people over the phone. But obviously we talk about very difficult topics. But I feel like I know all of the guests that have been on the program very well. And when you get up to that number of like 100, you realize sooner or later, one of these guests well, something's going to happen, whether through natural causes or whatever. And really, I did not think that it would be Jessica. And I think that's why it affected me the way it did. And it still hurts. I'll be honest with you. It still hurts. Never met her in person. But and maybe the case, the reason, could be, with that particular case being that I know Kingman, Arizona very well. I've been there many times when I lived in Las Vegas. Know that town very well. And maybe that, that has something to do with, I felt a certain closeness more to that case than maybe some of the other ones because I knew the area. But, she saw a lot in her 32 years, and none of it, um, was her fault. And it's just sad. It's just really sad. But the funny thing is that she now knows. She now knows what happened to Tyler. If you're going to believe in the afterlife and all of that, then I hope we get those. I hope we get those kind of answers in the afterlife. I hope that's what it is. If there's going to be something, I hope that's what it is. That we find out all the answers to these cases that, we don't, maybe not going to get the answers before we leave here. So, and that's why, humorously enough, that's why I've decided that my epitaph on my grave is going to be, or whatever, that's what you call it, right? The epitaph is going to be a line from an Iron Maiden song, of course. And it's going to be, "Don't cry for me, beyond is where I learn." And that's what I hope the afterlife, once again, if you believe in that type of thing, I'm not trying to force anything down anybody's throat. But if you believe in that type of thing, I hope we do get those kind of answers that we can't get before we leave here. And, I guess the only, it's not a good thing. Jessica should still be here. Whatever happened, we all wish that she was here. But if she's not going to be here, then I hope that she now has all the answers that she has. So there you go. So there's that. Sorry to start off, but there's no good place to talk about it, so I just figured that I needed to talk about it. So I figured I'd start off with that. So Jessica Curtis, I hope you're resting in peace. I'm sorry I never got to know you in person. I wish we could have met. As I mentioned, I didn't realize it. I've been so busy with everything that the Alyssa Turney case with the 100th case that we covered on Unfound. And so Bobby Tennyson's from last week was number 101, and this Friday is going to be 102. So it's amazing how fast time flies. It seems like I was just on 25 or something. In fact, somebody even said to me that, we were talking about how there's over 3,400 members in the discussion group now, which is a private group. And I said I can remember when there was like 62 members in there or something. So time does fly. It certainly flies. And the episodes have certainly been racked up, and it's gone so fast. I can't even begin to tell you how fast it's gone. So there you go. As you can see, I'm back in Madeira Beach. I played in a disc golf tournament this weekend and stunk it up. Hello, Marilla. You must be new. I don't recognize your name, but welcome to all of you. Kenny and Sarah and Jill. Let's see. Kelly, Heather, this Friday's guest. Thank you all for joining in. Joyce says Jessica's now at peace, and her loved ones are rejoicing in paradise. I hope you're right, Joyce. Andrea says, I remember when the group was tiny. Me too, Andrea. Me too. But I'm back in Madeira Beach. Playing a disc golf tournament. It was totally horrible. I don't want to talk about it. But I did get to go to Universal Studios last Friday. Really cool, but horribly overpriced. I mean, if you are thinking about taking your family there, it is a good time. No doubt about it. Lots of cool things. Lots of things to do and see and ride. Of course, the Harry Potter stuff's there. Jurassic Park stuff's there. On and on and on. It's really cool. But man, is it overpriced to get in. Honestly. Honestly, I was really blown away. So, I don't see the prices coming down. But just warning you right now, if you ever think about going there, you're probably going to have to save up a little bit. I was really, really um, surprised. And, you know, the other thing is, as a Florida resident, I get discounts at Disney to get in, big time discounts. Universal, no discounts. So there's that as well. Angel says, I joined the group at 260 something. Yeah, Angel, I know you've been around for a long time and I deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Janet says, it's a quality podcast. The growth is hard earned and deserved. Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. So, and then the other thing probably that I need to talk about is that I at least got the newsletter out on time. It came out yesterday. Hopefully, I know all of you are, if you're dedicated watchers of the live show, I'm going to guess that you were on the mail list. You should have gotten the newsletter sometime yesterday. If you didn't and you think you're on the list, please check your spam folder. Sometimes group emails in certain servers get sent directly to a spam folder. Please check your spam folder for that. I, of course, want you to see the newsletter and read about maybe some things that I don't talk about in this live show or on, you know, the weekly episodes. So I hope you will remember to check that out. I hope you got the newsletter. I hope you liked it. You know what I try to do with those newsletters. I try to tell you about some things that are going on behind the scenes. Try to let you maybe a little bit behind the curtain of what's going on. And I hope you enjoy it. Andrea says, Universal's so expensive, especially when you have 6 kids to take. Exactly, Andrea. I cannot even imagine taking a family of 5 or 6 to get there. I cannot imagine it. The money involved. Crazy, crazy money. Once again, Universal, really cool. Really, really, really cool. Everything. At that price point, it's very overpriced. But, I don't know when the next time I'm going to have an opportunity to go, so had to go. Let's do a question right now. I had been asked by somebody. Let me make sure I get. It was a question along the lines of, if I want to be an armchair detective, where are places? What can I do? Where are sites that I can go to? To start or to help or something like that? It's a great question. I can, being that I've been doing this for 2 years, I certainly have a different opinion on this than maybe when I was a guy who didn't do a program and was just going to web sleuths and other things. My opinion on this has changed. There was somebody recently, maybe about 3 weeks ago. In fact, she just contacted me again today, who contacted me and said she's one of the cases that I don't want to give anything too much away, but she was interested in a personal case. She says, what can I do to help get this case more attention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I told this listener, I told her, if I were you, this is what I would do. I would go out and make a list of all the media companies, newspapers, and that particular state where this disappearance happened. Doesn't matter if it's a huge city newspaper or a tiny little newspaper, one that's only like once a week or something. You make a list of all of them, and then once a day, you just email a couple of them. Hey, did you hear about this disappearance? I don't think it's getting enough attention. This family needs more attention for this disappearance. Can you do a story on it? And you just do a couple a day. Maybe make 2 emails a day. Not even worrying about whether you get a response or not. But just doing that couple times a day. And then once you've gone through your list, you start over. You do it again. Maybe you pick out somebody different at that newspaper and email them, and you get this rotation going. Then maybe you get back to that first person you emailed after a month, and you just keep that rotation going. You just use a form email. Doesn't take a lot of time, but it is very, very helpful. Okay, I can't even begin to tell you just something which seems small, how much help that can give a family who's trying to get attention for a case. And it doesn't take a lot of time, and it's not necessarily a lot of work. That is something that, in your particular state, hello, Joey, how are you doing tonight? If you have a case that you've really latched onto, wherever, and even if you don't even live in that state, and that's the cool thing about the internet, you can live in Florida and be interested in a case in California. You could get of course, California, the most populous state, lots of cities, lots of towns. There's tons and tons of different media companies, media outlets in California. Well, you just go and start searching around. You can go to Wikipedia as a list. You can just Google it or whatever you want to do. And just make a list, go in there, find the emails, and just get a rotation going. Hey, have you heard about this disappearance? Here's some facts on it. Here's some links. This family needs some more attention for it. Can you do a story on it? That's one thing. And this is exactly what I told this woman who, really, once again, doesn't, and as I think about it now, she doesn't live in the state where the disappearance happened, but she was really moved by it. And I said, well, you know what? You live there. The case is in this other state. Here's what you can do. And she was, oh, yeah. And she's been doing that. I think it's helping. The other thing that I think, an armchair detective, this is the person who I asked the question. That's the word they use. Armchair detective. Something else is something that I think is overlooked, although I try to bring it up when I can, is that being that a lot of Unfound's cases are older, I'd say the average age of a case that Unfound covers has to be between 50 and 20 years old. Well, time, of course, doesn't help in missing persons cases. However, what time does do, it lends perspective. What it also does, it allows us to see how people who are around the case, maybe some suspects or somebody like that, what did they do with their lives after the disappearance? And I can't tell you how many people kind of forget about that, and having conversations with guests that, if there's a disappearance in the year 2000, well, everybody back then who was around the person who disappeared might have been perfect. If you would have looked for any criminal record, nothing. But maybe since then they've had a rape charge, or, some sort of, they're now on a sex offender list or something like that. Well, those are all things that can be discovered. Most of those records are online. And it would be very helpful for you, if you want to be an armchair detective, become familiar with those sites, maybe like mugshots.com, just as an example, where you can look up names of people who were maybe around, had connections to the missing person, be familiar with, any court sites in your particular state, because it's all going to be on there. It's all public record. And a lot of this information can be accessed through the internet. Now, once in a while, you may have to pay for something, but you don't know how much. Hello, Carrie and Rachel. Jeremiah, what's going on? Donna. You don't know how much that could help if you were to start, going back through cases, seeing who some of the people, shady people, or just regular people who are around the missing person, you start looking them up. And they might have had a clean record back in 2000, but now, 18 years later, they have all these charges. That would certainly be able to help a family and point them in a particular direction. This person might not be the person that they thought. And that's why, you'll hear me once in a while, ask people, what is so-and-so, what has John Smith done with his life since this disappearance? You've heard me ask that question before. That's why I ask it. And if the person says, well, I really don't know, my next statement is, well, maybe you should look it up. maybe you need to look at some court records. Maybe you need to look at a sex offender list. Maybe you can do this. Maybe you can do that, because then that could start to narrow the people who might have been involved in that disappearance. So that would be something else that I would recommend to any, once again, to use the word armchair detectives. Familiarizing yourself with any sites where you can find criminal records on people, whether, once again, at the state, mostly going to be the state level. Something else I think is, be able to, I know for me, something that I know that I've gotten really better at since Unfound started is being able to connect people to people. Especially, this is especially helpful when I've been working with the Trib people, triblive.com people in Pittsburgh, trying to find relatives in the Pittsburgh area of people who went missing. I'll go between like ussearch.com, of course, Facebook, the whitepages.com, all these different things, and try to correlate between who is this, who is that, is this person the sister or the mother, or is it just a distant cousin? If you can really learn to do those different types of searches, doing variations on names, you'd be amazed, how you can track people down. I know, once again, I thought I was good at it a couple years ago. I am way better at it now. So that would be my other suggestion. So, picking out a case maybe and contacting media companies, emailing them over and over and over. Becoming familiar with any websites that show public information regarding criminal records, anything like that. And then becoming familiar with sites that list people, like where they live, their age, any relatives, becoming very familiar in how those sites work and how you can really do good searches on them. All of those things can be very helpful in you becoming a better armchair detective. And be very helpful, of course, to families in the meantime. And all of that, guess what? Pretty much all of that's going to be free. You wouldn't have to pay for anything. Stephanie, what's going on tonight? Yes, you're tardy, but I'm going to forgive you anyway, Stephanie. Cherie says networking, newspapers. Yes, absolutely. And also, if you want to be a good armchair detective, you maybe should go to a missing persons event. I think a lot of states have them now. Show up, see what's going on, introduce yourself maybe to a family member's there, but not in a creepy way. I think we all know what that kind of means. Just being friendly, just introducing yourself. I've heard about, for example, your daughter going missing. I just want to know, I heard about it maybe on Unfound. I thought you might be here. It's really moving me. Just want to introduce myself, express my sympathy. As just a regular person, I have a regular job and everything. Is there some way I can help you? That, of course, goes a long way as well. Yes, Stephanie, mugshots.com. That's true. Carrie, I guess you're the one that asked that question. Carrie, that would be my recommendations. I think it's a great question because I think a lot of people do want to help and have a hard time figuring it out. And it's especially difficult if, you don't know how to use the internet that well. But doing those things will, of course, I think, raise your proficiency very quickly. You just have to be patient. It's not going to all come to you. It's going to be a little awkward emailing people you don't know, but it's worth it. And then once you start doing it after a month, it's going to feel like you've been doing this your whole life. And I know for those of us who have devoted so much time to missing persons cases, we realize how the general public doesn't quite understand what's going on with missing persons cases. They don't realize, the huge numbers of people who are, have cases that are unsolved. They don't realize maybe the effects it has on families and how we know that, just one person going missing can tear a family apart. Well, then it's up to us to try to educate them. And it's up to us, to do, things once in a while. Maybe not every day. Not everybody has the time, but it's up to us who care about these things to at least do some things sometimes. Carrie says, I couldn't come up with a better way to ask besides armchair detective. I think it's a great term. I just wanted to make the viewers realize that that you were the person that used that. I think it's a fine term. I'm fine with that. That's cool. But armchair detective, that's a very popular term. So Carrie, thank you for the great question. Stormy, how are you doing tonight? Good to see you. Thank you. As you can see, I'm wearing an Unfound shirt tonight at myshopify.com, Patreon, and PayPal. Of course, I talk about those in the newsletter. I talk about them every episode. We've gotten some new Patreon supporters. Would deeply appreciate it if you'd become a supporter for just as low as $2 a month. You get a free ebook and access to the private blog where I do a little more theorizing. I know many of you are already Patreon supporters, and I think you really enjoy maybe hearing my deep thoughts about some of these cases, some things that I don't express in the episode simply because, once again, when I start expressing my opinions, then I think everybody's going to start thinking like I do because you suspect that I have some inside knowledge. I want you all to be free thinkers. And that's why I don't do a lot of theorizing on the program. Cherie says she needs a shirt. Cherie, we can make that happen. That's a good point. Cherie's also saying the blog alone is worth $3 a month. I promise you. Thank you. And this isn't some blog where I'm just writing like 500 words. I think that anybody who is on there knows I do at least 1,500 words a week writing about a case. And it could just be stream of consciousness type of stuff, or theorizing, or a case that reminds me of something else, and all sorts of things that come to my mind, and is expressed on that. And I just don't think that what I say there, I don't think is, once again, appropriate for the episodes, because I'm not trying to push people in a particular direction. All right, but I'm human. Like, we all have opinions, but I want to keep Unfound a factual show, and I don't want to be one of these shows that just theorize and theorize and theorize, for an hour. So thank you, Ken. That's very nice of you to say. Deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Carrie says she's a new supporter and hooked. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. Stormy says she's doing pretty well, fighting a cold. And yes, Stormy, I know you. If everybody doesn't know, if you'll remember ASOC, when I interviewed Kenneth Maines last year, Stormy got the detective in her brother's case to send his information to ASOC, and ASOC took on Brandon's case, and they're going to be issuing a final report to Stormy, from what I understand, is quite soon. And she's saying, we are waiting for some findings on my brother's case this week sometime. Hopefully, yes. I'll be interested to see what they say, Stormy. But I'm glad that Ken could make that happen for you, and I hope he gives you some positive feedback. I really, really hope that happens. I know it's been a long time coming. So I appreciate that. And anybody else who's watching, I know I do have some guests in there. If you can get the detective who is working on your missing persons case to send the information, the file, to ASOC, I would surely put in a kind word, a good word with Ken, because I talk to him once in a while, about your case, and I hope to get it moved up in the line. I would do as much as I could to make that happen. But the way that has to work is the detective or detectives, police department on the case has to voluntarily send the information to ASOC. That's the way it works. Barbara, anything on the Tom Brown case? And not that I've heard, Barbara. Not that I've heard. And Kristen, good to see you tonight. Good to see you. So we got Patreon and PayPal. We got the playing cards, and of course the books. I'm working on Volume 5. It's been a long time coming. As you know, I've been messing around with these I've had some transcriptions done by humans, and I've had some transcriptions done by computer, and we're going to find out how all that works together. It should be interesting. But Volume 5 is being worked on right now. Hopefully it'll be done in a couple weeks. And it will, it'll start with Shannon Turner, Brandy Wells, Clashendra Hall, Ronnie Russell, Shane Fell, and Ashley Eifert, I think, are in this book. I think it's at least them, if not one more case. They will all be in this volume, Volume 5. So be looking for that. I had another question, and I know Jill's in here. Kind of a funny question, but let me see if I got this right, Jill. You know, these let me see. Jill said, what could others do to make your job easier? So my job. Ed, what can we all do to make your job easier? Jill, thank you for caring about making my job easier. Let me think about that for a moment. Let me do something real quick here first. Okay. Okay, here we go. What to make my job easier? That's very considerate of you, Jill. You know, it's I don't know. I have to admit, just that people have found the program and have said such great things about it. I think that they understand that when they listen to Unfound, they're listening to something that's a little different than a lot of true crime programs out there. That, you know, I know some of you spread the word about Unfound. I've seen you, you know, talk about it on Web Sleuth. I've seen Unfound mentioned on Web Sleuth. I've seen Unfound mentioned in the True Crime Podcast group on Facebook. I've seen it so many. That alone makes my job a lot easier. All right? That alone, you just can't imagine what that means. I know that a lot of you have written nice reviews about Unfound. Cannot thank you enough. I know that, you know, it's always, you know, a little overwhelming to me when, you know, somebody posts, and I don't look for these things. These people do it on their own, but they say that Unfound is their favorite program, their favorite podcast, true crime podcast. And we know how many of those there are out there. And I know that many of you listen to other podcasts, and that's fine. Of course, I'm not here to control you. That you would say that Unfound and what we do here is, you know, is so good that it's number one. You know, that those things make my job easier. No doubt about it. And I know those are things that a lot of you are already doing naturally. So that's what makes my job easier. I can tell you that my job would be a lot harder if there was nobody talking about the program and there were nobody saying anything good about it. And of course, there weren't 3,400 people in the private discussion group, and there weren't people who tuned in. I know a lot of these people tuning in every Wednesday. That would certainly make my job a lot harder. But by already doing what all of you are already doing, that makes my job a lot easier. All right, it keeps it's easy for maybe for me because of the way I am to stay motivated anyway. But you know, it's It's, it's a goal I need to reach with every episode. And so that keeps me on my toes. All of you, because you have high expectations for the program, you like it, you want it to be good, you understand what we're doing here. You have high expectations, and I want to meet them. All right. And even though that may sound like it makes my job harder, it actually makes my job easier. So I appreciate it. Sue says, how do I get you to sign volume 2 for me? Well, it depends if you already have it or not, Sue. If you already have it, then that's going to be a little tough. However, we might be, if you want volume 3, maybe we can work something out where I sign volume 3 for you. How about that? If you already have volume 2 in your possession, unless we meet each other in person, it's going to be a little tough. But maybe if you contact me personally, we can work out something for volume 3. Let me know. And Sue, thank you for being so interested in the books. Thank you. Shuri says, listen on Podomatic. That, of course, helps Unfound stay at the top of the rankings on Podomatic. That's true. Word of mouth is the best advertising by far, Carrie says. Carrie says, others' podcasts tend to bore her. Well, everybody has their own taste, Carrie, and I'm glad that Unfound goes along with your taste. Thank you. So that's, Jill, I know you answered that question. I don't know, maybe you were thinking about something a little more constructive or something, but I have to agree with Carrie. Word of mouth is the best advertising by far. I would just ask all of you to keep it up. And it's something I think all of you are doing naturally anyway. I don't think that, I know I ask for that every episode, but I would not say that I beat it over your head or anything. I know it's being done. Unfound's listenership, by my estimation, has increased by about 30% since the summer. So there's a lot of good things going on, and it's all thanks to all of you. I can't make people come to the program. I do the episodes, I do the interviews and everything, but it's like Field of Dreams. I build it and they will come. Well, that's not necessarily true. You build the program and then you hope people tune in. You hope it's something good, and I'm glad that all of you do, and that once again makes my job a lot easier. Sue says, okay, yes, Sue, message me. Please message me. Do that, please. I wanted to talk about this case. Ashley, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Meiss. She is a military veteran who disappeared in May of this year from Ogden, Kansas. Not at Ogden, Utah, Ogden, Kansas. She allegedly went for a jog and then never returned. Kind of sounds like the Molly Tibbetts story, doesn't it? Well, the very weird thing is that her remains have been found, and it sounds to me like they were right behind her apartment complex. I read somewhere where they were within so many feet of where she actually lived, and of course she is deceased, and that's very sad. I don't know what to think about that. I'm going to just take for granted that her remains, whatever happened, it does sound like she did have some depression problems. I think she had PSD from being in the military, might have seen some inaction somewhere, maybe. Does sound like she was struggling with some mental health issues. So, suicide is always going to be a possibility. But on the other hand, I have to take for granted that her remains have been there the whole time. And it would seem to me that if a search was done for her back in May, that the first place they would look is right around her where she lived. But she just got discovered within the last week. Little hard to understand. If we're to believe that, unless there's some sort of, Carrie, yes, she was the one suffering from PTSD. If the facts are as they seem, that her remains have been there since May, this has to call into question the kind of search that was actually done at the beginning. And You know how I feel about searches. I know that they have to be done. This is the same way I feel about dogs being used. I know dogs have to be used. All right. They're going to be pulled in, brought in. They're going to be, but we know as much as dogs are used, dogs rarely find any missing people. The living beings that find missing people are humans. And we don't have a sense of smell like a dog. We just use it through information, everything else. But you know how I feel about searches. Once again, I know that they have to be done. But then we think back to how often do searches ever find anything? Not very often. But it seems like in this case, it could be that searches were done and the searches weren't very good, which is a whole maybe other topic for another time. That, it's sometimes not enough to do a search. Sometimes you have to get people who know what they're doing, who are motivated, because we're all human. After walking a mile and not finding anything, some people's minds start to wonder. They start thinking, well, I got to go home and, wash clothes and things, because we're all human. We want people to be so devoted and really into it and everything, but not everybody's like that. And, this is something that once in a while comes up when I talk to family members, is that, of course, by the time I talk to them, the search has been done maybe years ago. I remind them, if they want to organize a new search or something, make sure that they get good people. And having, let's say 100 really motivated people is better than having 300 people who maybe are just showing up for whatever other reason. Pamela says, I thought I read something about she was partially buried, and am I wrong on that? I didn't see that, Pamela. I didn't see that. But, what happened if she was partially buried, what happened between May and now that now there's just something about it that just seems a little strange. That she could be so close to home and be hidden for this long. Now, there is a case that I'm thinking of that this reminds me of, and it was a case that was covered on Disappeared. Man, I can't remember the kid's name, but you'll remember. I'm sure one of you will, as soon as I start talking about him, you'll come up with the name. He was in a band, and he was living in a house with some other people, and the back door, like a screen door, had been broken. And then one of his other bandmates had done these pictures holding a gun, stuff. Who is that? I can't remember the young guy's name who disappeared, but he disappeared, and they were thinking it was foul play and everything. Well, he was another one who and he was gone for much longer than just 4 or 5 months. Well, they found his remains just a mile down the road, like just off the road in some brush or something like that. And I don't know exactly. I still to this day don't know what happened in that case. I don't know if he committed suicide or got hit by a car. I don't know. But he was found just a mile from his house in an area that you think would have been searched at some time. So I don't know. It's just some of these things that pop up are just a little confusing. And so when I'd been following Ashley's case for a while just to see what happened, and of course it everybody reminded of Pamela in the Northwest. Pamela, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it was a case from the Northwest, Pamela. Yes. Kid was kind of skinny, dark hair, dark short hair. Can't remember. But I've been following that, and I never suspected in this Ashley's case that she'd be found so close to home. That's a surprise. So I wanted to talk about that, and I think what her case also does bring into focus how many missing veterans we have. There is a site devoted. In fact, I was just talking to a listener earlier today about that site, missingveterans.com, and she said, well, I wanted to think about starting a show doing nothing but on missing veterans. I think that's a fantastic idea. I love that idea. I love it. And, missingveterans.com is probably a good place to start with that. And if you haven't been to that site, you should go there. It's very sad. That's also very sad. Brian Barton. Jasmine gets it. There it is, Jasmine. Brian Barton. Exactly right. Brian Barton. You can look it up. Vanished. Was in a band. Had some things going on. Well, they did a search for him. Thought he ran off or maybe had been murdered. And then he's found like a mile down the road, just off the road. Like I think he was like even on church property or something like that. So there you go. Just reminds me that Brian Barton's case reminds me of Ashley's case. Maybe you can look both up and see if you think the same thing. Let's move on to something else. I was going to talk about it last week, but I didn't have a chance to. Ran out of time. This uncaught killer in Chicago that they had this video of. It happened in the Rogers Park area of Chicago. I've never been to Chicago except to the airport, so I don't know where that is in the Chicago suburbs or whatever. But if you'll remember going back, I think maybe to beginning of this month, the end of last month, an older man had been shot, a younger man had been shot, and this guy was walking around in broad daylight, all bundled up, mask. You can only see his eyes, hoodie, dark jacket, dark pants. And they have him on video walking in these neighborhoods. And then, of course, like I said, he shot a couple people. No, Carrie says, if a listener does start that show on missing veterans, please share it. Several of us would listen. I know you would. I know you would, Carrie. I know you would. It's a great idea for a program. But this killer in Chicago, he's still uncaught. To my knowledge, I was looking around today to see if there are any other murders that they think, recent murders that can be connected to him. Doesn't look like it. Now, what's tough about Chicago is there's a lot of people dying there every day. So there's that. But as far as I can tell, this guy, whoever he is, and I think it's a guy, that would make sense, is maybe slowed down. Maybe he's gone underground for now until kind of, the heat goes away, police looking for him, and maybe he'll come back to do this again, which tells me that this person isn't some psychotic, some psycho just going around shooting people. He realizes that the cops are after him. He wants to continue his spree. He knows the best way to not get caught is just to tone it down. So he is not, so motivated that he's just going on just doing something wild or anything. Very calculating. And it'll be interesting to see if they can catch this guy before he murders again. Now, here in Tampa, earlier this year, maybe it's time, so maybe the end of last year, we had a similar thing going on, but it was at night. There was a guy going around. I think there were 4 murders over in Tampa, just a variety of just random shootings, random murders. And that kid was eventually shot or caught. And I think there was a shootout. I think the cops shot him while trying to apprehend him, I think. Now I'm thinking about that. Maybe that's not the case, but his parents were in total denial that their son would ever do that. You can look that up too. Just do Tampa and murder spree on Google, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But what happened either earlier this year or last year kind of reminds me of what's going on in Chicago right now. Of course, to me, the amazing thing is this guy's walking around in broad daylight. It's not that cold in Illinois yet. And cars are just passing him. He's on this video all bundled up. Just normal as ever, as if that's just accepted. It's just a little weird. But I wanted to talk about, if you want to know the names of the 2 guys who were killed, Elijah Moskowitz and Douglas Watts were the 2 men who were murdered. One was walking his dog, I think, and I forget what the other guy was doing. So we'll see if they can catch this guy. We'll see. Cherie says that's how I dressed for work today. It was 59 degrees. Come on, Cherie. Come on. Carrie says people are just not observant. It's crazy. Carrie, thanks for tuning in tonight. Joni and Ashley and Dan are all here. Thanks for all tuning in. It's a little late, but that's okay. Man, time's flown. We're already at 55 minutes in. Let's talk about this week's case. This week, we have the disappearance of Dale Kerstetter. This case goes back 31 years to 1987, specifically September 12th, 1987. It happened in Bradford, Pennsylvania. If not, you've not heard of Bradford. It is a tiny town in the upper central, northern central area of Pennsylvania, right there along I-80. I'm from Pennsylvania. I don't think that I've ever been there. Maybe drove by there. I don't think I've ever been there. But he was a security guard at a glass plant run by Corning, a company that's now known as Dow Corning, but at the time it was just Corning. And it was a glass plant. And he was a night shift security guard there. And he clocked in at 11 o'clock, no big deal. Well, when the security guard showed up the next morning to relieve him, this would have been on the weekend when the plant was closed, Dale wasn't there. His truck was out front with the keys in it. His lunch was in the lunchroom, but he was nowhere to be found. And it wasn't until they viewed some videotapes days later, why they didn't just do that at the time of when they discovered he was disappeared, he vanished. I don't know. We talk about that in this episode. But when they took a look at the videotapes, they discovered that the night that Dale disappeared, there was an intruder at the plant. Some person, probably a guy, masked, heavy coat on, came in and seemingly took Dale hostage. And what happened during that time is that this intruder actually took some valuable metal out of platinum. You've heard of platinum. Took some platinum out of the plant to the tune of $250,000 worth of platinum. Now, you should know $250,000 of platinum at the time was only like 25 pounds. It's more expensive than gold. And so they discovered that Dale had been taken hostage, and this is a case that is still unsolved. The platinum has never been found. The intruder that night has never been identified. And I think this case got a lot of attention because, as panelist states here, in 1990, Unsolved Mysteries, when I think that Robert Stack was still hosting it, featured this disappearance. Now, the important thing to understand is if you were to ever find that episode from 1990, the video that you see in that are recreations. No, the public has never seen the actual videotapes taken inside the plant that night. So any pictures or anything are recreations that Unsolved Mysteries did for that episode. So that guy that you see in there is not Dale Kerstetter. That's an actor. Now, who we have as a guest for this episode, her name is Heather Grotman. She is in the, I know she is watching tonight. She started a new blog back in May, and when she let me know about it, she let me know about this probably the beginning of September. I was instantly impressed by it. Just like I am impressed with Anthony's blog, Crime Blogger 1983. Just like I am impressed with Dennis Mayans, the websites that he runs for Kristen Modafferi, Kent Jacobs, Kristen Smart. The standards that I have when it comes to true crime, whether it's a program or writing. And Heather's, I could tell, instantly met, my standards. Like me, she reaches out to family members. So in writing, so she is my guest. She has written on her blog, lostinfoundblogs.com. So it's LOSTNFOUND blogs.com. She also is a person who doesn't rip off Wikipedia, doesn't rip off Web Sleuths. She finds the family members to talk to. In her case, though, she writes about it. And I've been really impressed with what she's doing there. And she's going about it the right way. She's definitely going about it the right way. So when she first contacted me about, hey, I'm doing this blog, and I checked it out, I immediately said to her, you know, we should get together somewhere down the road, and you should come on the program, just like I've done. Because, well, as you know, Anthony was on the program for Tammy Leppert's case, Evelyn Hartley's case. Dennis was on for Kent Jacobs' case, and then this past summer, Kristen Modafferi. And so if I see bloggers out there who are doing good work and are contacting family members who've really gotten into it once again, and just anybody can voice opinions. It actually takes work to find new information. You know, I wanted to have her on the program, and in this case in particular with Dale, of course, caught my eye. I think I remember knowing about it at one time. I can't say I've ever actually seen the Unsolved Mysteries episode, but I think I just kind of knew about it, maybe just being from Pennsylvania. So I thought, yeah, this is probably a good one to have Heather on to talk about. And I'm sure it's one that, you know, some of you have heard of before. And I think we go pretty deep into the facts. And this episode is going to be a little different because it's a blogger like Heather. We do a little more theorizing than is normally done during an episode. So that is the case for this Friday, the disappearance of Dale Kerstetter. He disappeared September 12th, 1987 from Bradford, Pennsylvania. And the title of this episode is As Clear as Glass. So that's going to be this Friday, of course, 2 p.m. Eastern. Hold on a second while I turn my air conditioning off, because if I leave it on, you'll never hear me. Kate, thanks for tuning in tonight. Hey, Emily, there you are. I'm going to talk to you after this episode, I think. Stephanie says, I may have that episode from Unsolved Mysteries. I used to record them when they were on Lifetime. I will check and share if it's in my collection. Thank you, Stephanie. That's great. Carrie says, you would think they would want to show at least a small clip, help ID intruder. You know, Carrie, I would agree with you, but that's not what has happened in the last 31 years. Maybe if somebody started filing some FOIA requests to the state police in Pennsylvania, maybe that might, you know, you asked about armchair detectives. Carrie, that's what armchair detectives can do. Anybody can fill out a FOIA request. There's something else. Jody says, were they able to get a clear description of the intruder from the video? I'm guessing not, Joni. He was wearing, I'm taking for granted that it was a guy. Was wearing a mask, was wearing like a jacket. The only thing I think you could really tell from it was the guy's height. That's about it. But we're going to talk about all of that on Friday. Heather is my guest. Really good interview. And I'm not sure too many podcasts have really covered his case, even though it's a very unique one. It's not every day that a security guard goes missing on the job. And on top of that, it's kind of odd maybe for a disappearance to go along with some kind of heist, which happened in this case. So it'll be all up to all of you to decide what you think happened and who did it. And, of course, as you may suspect already, there are people out there who think that maybe Dale had something to do with the heist and then maybe got double-crossed. That will be for all of you to decide. So we've been going about an hour and 4 minutes, so I think I'm going to call it a night. What did we do tonight? Of course, we talked about the passing of Jessica Curtis. That's something that's going to affect me for a while, I know. I mentioned that we passed the 100 case mark on Unfound. Alyssa Turney's case was number 100. I'm back in Madeira Beach. Universal Studios is way overpriced, stunk it up at the tournament up in Floral City. The newsletter, if you think you're on the list and you didn't get it, you might want to check your spam folder. If you don't think you're on the list, then privately contact me and let me know. Did some business, shirts, books, Patreon, and PayPal. That's another way. If you're interested in helping the program, obviously that's another way you can help. Jill asked, how can you make my job easier? Patreon and PayPal certainly helps because a lot of that money goes right back to the guests. I talked about Ashley Meese, a military veteran who went missing, and now her remains were found very, very close to where she lived, which really surprises me. We talked about this killer in Chicago who hasn't been caught yet. And then I didn't have a chance to talk about Hurricane Michael and all the people who are still missing up there, but I think that number is going to come way down as people come back into the area. And then finally, I talked about this Friday's episode, The Disappearance of Dale Kerstetter, an episode that is called As Clear as Glass. And the guest will be Heather Grotman from the blog lostandfoundblogs.com. So there you go. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for, yes, thank you, Sharif. Here I am using this lingo. Freedom of Information Act is what I was talking about for you armchair detectives. You want to help out? Maybe you can start filing some FOIAs in any cases that you're interested in. And thank you, Sherry, for mentioning Patreon. But I'm going to be going. It's been a great night. I ask you to keep Jessica Curtis's family in your thoughts and prayers. Once again, if you're into that, if you're atheist, that's fine too. That's fine too. But just keep them because I know that they're having a tough time. Jessica did have a boyfriend. I think that she had at least one child with, so I know he's having a tough time. And it's just very sad. So keep her in your mind. But I'm going to go. Thanks for tuning in tonight. You will hear me on Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.